told my girl to pipe down, need it right now. Lately I've been going till the lights out. Got my face up and my eyes down. Shawty, now you know what this is like now. Now I got a big drop top and I'm rolling. And I told my girl I'ma be up till the morning.
Hello and welcome back, everybody. Brandon Osborne here, aka Control for Days. We are jumping into a modern league match. Currently, this is an unknown opponent. If you've watched the intro to this video, you likely know what I am playing against. I am going to walk you through step by step the way you go about winning this matchup and the way you go about navigating a typical match in this matchup. Without further ado, let's take a look. Our opponent has revealed Lurrus. We are on a 2-lander with some Undying Creatures, a Birds of Paradise, and a Quarter Calling. Hand is okay, could be better, but I think it's a keep in spite of its limitations. So we're going to keep, and we are on the draw here. So I'm hoping to see something like Death Shadow across the table, which we might be playing. Opponent leads on a Blood Crypt, shocks, Thought seizes us. Feels like Death Shadow. So in the past, Black-Red Lurrus was pretty popular. That seems to have faded a bit in terms of popularity, and now Death Shadow seems to be just the best deck in the format. So that's what I'm anticipating I'm playing against. Alright, so considerations here. So there's a couple of things that we need to be mindful of. 2 mana means they can dash a Ragavan. So having that on my radar, do I want to play a Yawgmoth, have a blocker, and then next turn play 2 1-drops, or do I want to play my birds, likely get it bolted, or they dash a Ragavan, swing, I don't block, and then they bolt my bird anyway. So given that line of play, and the fact that, I'm not in that big of a rush, I'm actually going to lead on a Yawgmoth here. So kind of thinking a couple of steps ahead and trying to anticipate what the opponent could do is the reason why I'm playing out that Yawgmoth. Might not dash Ragavan, but I don't want to get destroyed by that if they do. So, and chances are they have some form of 1-mana removal because they always do. It's just a known fact. There's always an Unholy Heat or a Lightning Bolt in their hand. And there's the Ragavan. Makes you feel smart. Okay, so we drew a Black Source. Boseiju is not going to be particularly relevant in this matchup from a destroying artifacts, enchantments, things of that nature. So they're at 12 life already. I'm trying to see. So they Thought Seized me with the Blood Crypt, so they wouldn't have been able to play a Death Shadow given the way their mana has lined up. So they could still have a Death Shadow in hand. I'm going to give it one more turn before I start attacking, just because I don't want to make their Death Shadows bigger and better if I can avoid it. So we're going to play out Yawgmoth and a Birds of Paradise, and then I will pass the turn. So generally in this matchup, once again, if you watch the intro to this video, you saw one of the keys to victory is if they are above 12 life, you don't put them below 12 life if you can help it. So if you want to avoid feeding into their game plan as much as possible, because their strategy is, hey, let me get below 12 life and cast a Death Shadow, you don't want to give that to them if you don't have to. Alright, so they exiled a Bauble, which they are casting now. They also have Lurrus over here, just something for us to be mindful of. It looks like they missed their land drop, possibly. Which I think this is the first time I've ever seen an expressive iteration not hit a land. So, I don't know if that's been your experience. I imagine when you're playing the card, it feels absolutely terrible to have somebody do that. When you're playing the card, it feels terrible to have that happen to you, and it probably sticks out in your mind, but as an opponent, it feels like it never misses. Okay, so we drew our best possible draw here. I think it would be very hard for us to lose from this point. So yeah, I think we lead with an attack with both of our young wolves. See what he does. So at this point we have infinite chump blockers. We can draw as many cards as we want. And I'm going to draw a few cards just to have endurance up. Yeah, and they scoop there. So a byproduct of a good top deck on our part, but I think we were still ahead there. And them missing a land drop put us in a position where we basically, I mean, they were super dead. Okay, so I'm going to pull up my sideboard guide. There is a link in the description below if you want to access it. It has all of the top matchups in terms of what you bring in, what you bring out, keys to victory, key cards, everything you could possibly want in the description below. So, Death Shadow. Let me see here. All right, so typically I'll bring in a Crime Punishment, 2 Endurance, and a Grist. So nothing too fancy here. Just some good value cards that attack their strategy. The Crime Punishment I don't love, but it's a concession to Death Shadow and not having good answers to it, especially if it's bigger. So that's why that's coming in. Cards that are coming out, definitely Evolutions. We're pulling 2 Evos. And against Lurrus decks, or just decks in general that are able to wipe my 1-drop mana dorks off the board with ease, generally I'll cut some number of those. So I'm going to cut 2 Birds of Paradise as well. So 4 in, 4 out, nothing too crazy. And the reason why I'm cutting Evolution over Court of Calling is because them having Drown in the Lock just makes it a liability at times. So you need to be able to play around Drown in the Lock if you're going to cast an Eldritch Evolution. It's the end of the day for me. I've talked a lot today, so I'm sorry if my verbalization of some of these words is a little slurred. I promise I didn't drink anything. Okay, so another thing to be mindful of, opening hands, generally you don't want to mulligan against a deck that has so much discard. So even if a hand isn't excellent, if it's borderline keepable, you're going to keep it because you don't want to get shredded on a 6 or a 5 card hand. So we're going to keep our 7. I'm not saying this hand is bad, but I'm anticipating I'm going to be losing a couple of cards out of it. So it's not going to look as good as it does now when it's all said and done. Court of Calling is probably the worst card in our hand. And this card that they just played on the other side of the table is probably their best card against us. It seems silly. It's a 1-drop. It's nothing too fancy, but just the fact that they can feed their graveyard and it puts a quick clock on you. It's just in every matchup you play against where that card is on the opposing team. It's busted. It's such a good card. So here we're going to lead with Blooming Marsh, and as a concession to the Dragon's Rage Channeler, I think I'm actually going to lead on my Yawgmoth here. So we'll preserve our life total in the early game here. Let's see what we can do. And once again, playing out 1-drops, particularly mana dorks, they tend to just bite the dust right off the bat, so I'm not going to play into that right now. I don't need to. I'm not going anywhere fast this game, so. So them inquisitioning the ignoble is interesting. That makes sense. I was gonna say, to me, that would suggest that they don't have some 1-mana removal, but it just means they have 2 inquisitions, so. Okay, endurance is good if we can get another turn with it, i.e. if we can cast it next turn. Another thing to think about, Drown in the Loch, it's a tricky card to play around. You don't want to play your fetches and crack EOT filling up your graveyard because it gives them more of an opportunity to counter your spells and kill your creatures. So you want to hold off on fetch lands if you're able to. So we're just going to play our Tomb tapped and pass the turn. Next turn, once again, I probably won't be playing my fetch land. I'll take a point of damage off the peat land before I play out the fetch land. Alright, so they're at 12 life at this point. Not literally, but figuratively. So Thoughtseize, a lot of discard. So they're at 10 life. As I said at the beginning of the game, my hand was likely not going to look like what it started to look like at the beginning of the game because, well, exactly what you've seen here. They put a card on top of their library. Okay, Wall of Roots isn't bad. It's not great, but we'll take it. If by chance we get the opportunity to cast our Yawgmoth, it gives us something to sacrifice to it, so could be worse. Fatal Push. Sure. So they have a 3/3 now. Unfortunately, we're up to 4 cards in our graveyard now as well, so if they have Drown in the Loch, they'll be able to nab us with that. And I don't know that we have the ability to play around it at this point, given the fact we're on a pretty quick clock. So I think we are going to play into it and just hope they don't have it. Okay, so I think I'm going to save my fetch lands so I can get a Dryad Arbor if need be. Even though it gives them information, we're going to be drawing at least 2 cards here. And the card, so looks like they have Drown in the Loch, but the other card I was thinking about was Unholy Heat. I figure they have one of the 2. Okay. Yeah, so we're in trouble. Best card we can draw at this point is probably another Endurance. They put a card on top of their library, which is not good for us. Let's see what they have. Okay. Iteration, pretty good. See what they had. Kept the card on top. Doesn't feel good. I feel like every single time there's scrying, card is staying on top, so not ideal. Bobble's fine. And you can see how quickly Dragon's Raid Channeler spirals out of control. I mean, just their ability to just sift through their deck at this point with this card. And having them in multiples, I mean, it is nuts. Of note, they can't cast Death Shadow if they have one, which is good for us. They'll draw a card off the bobble. Let's see what we got here. Geist. Okay, I think we lead by drawing a card. So Yawgmoth, which gives us an out here. Gives us an out, but it's definitely not the best draw, given the fact that, you know, we're going to be at 4 life after this next attack. And then from there, you know, they have a lightning bolt. If we activate Yawgmoth once, we're just dead in the water at that point, so. Alright, we're done 4 life. Oh, I was supposed to fetch EOT there. It's not that big a deal because we can just get a basic forest, but probably should have done it upkeep as well. We are at 4 life. Alright, we'll lead with an attack. See if we got lightning bolted. We do not. Need to better organize my stack and triggers here, so it's just not piled up mess, so you can actually see what's going on. Our opponent seems to be thinking. I'm not sure what there is to think about. Maybe they're considering killing one of our undying creatures, which doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Okay. This is odd. The only thing I can think of is they have another Unholy Heat. Get to see some of their sideboard cards, which are expected here. Just realized the audio in my headphones is like really loud. Okay, there's the other Unholy Heat. Okay. Put a card on top of their library. Not great for us. Okay, Birds of Paradise. And then we're gonna have to draw another card. That's not it. Alright, we're dead. Moving on to a game 3. And now we're on the play. I think we're favored here, so hopefully we can pull this one out. Sideboarding. They're on their back foot here. I think I'm going to bring a bird back in and cut the Crime Punishment. Just for the sake of consistency, hopefully getting like a turn 2 wrist or have an endurance on hand turn 2. So let's see how this pans out. Okay, this hand looks good, looks acceptable. It's a little slow, but definitely a keep. They've got their lures over here. We're on 7. Let's see if they're keeping their 7 here. So once again, we're keeping in mind the fact Drown in the Loch, we need to play around that, so we're not going to be fetching turn 1, whereas normally we would probably do that. So we're just going to play out Besage You and pass the turn. So we're hoping they don't have a turn 1 Dragon's Rage, so that's their best card. That tempo it provides, it facilitates their game plan in like 2 different ways. It puts a clock on us, and when they're shredding our hand, it fills their graveyard, so it's like a triple win. Okay. Wrist makes sense. Okay, once again, we're not going to fill our graveyard if we don't need to. I'll take the damage. I'll play out the wall. So once again, like if I put a card in my graveyard that opens up Drown in the Loch to kill my Wall of Roots as well. So we'll make them have another form of removal to get rid of it if they want to do that. Okay, Yawgmoth, not bad. Okay, so the question, do I Wall of Roots Yawgmoth and play out a land, or do I just put Yawgmoth in play? I think I'm actually going to hold the Yawgmoth for 1 more turn. The card I'm playing around here, so there's risk versus reward. If they pull a Thoughtseize, it gets discarded. But if they have something like Fatal Push, I'll get a lot of value off of it next turn, as opposed to this turn, it will just hit the bin and I won't get any value off of it. So I'm going to play around that. It might be incorrect. It might be a little bit risky, but that's the way we're going to approach this turn. And I think we'll down tick and take a point of damage there. Once again, we're keeping our graveyard nice and shallow, playing around Drown in the Loch as much as possible. There's a lot to think about, a lot to play around. This matchup is very, very detail-oriented. Every single decision matters. So they got double Blood Crypt. Let's see if they fire off a Fatal Push. They do not. Fingers crossed, no Thoughtseize. Do they cancel each other out if there's 2 of them? 1 is good luck, 2 is double negative, double positive. Alright, they're at 13. They do not have Delirium, which is also important to note. And now if they have Fatal Push, they won't be able to get our Yawgmoth right off the board. And depending on what they do, that's going to dictate whether or not we crack our fetch land. Let us see. The suspense. Kroxa. I'm fine with that. Verdant Catacombs hitting the bin. I'll take 3. Okay. Alright, we're doing alright, guys. Alright, so we do need another black source. So I think we're gonna fetch EOT here. Okay. Okay, so they don't have Drown in the Loch mana up. So I'm actually going to activate my Yawgmoth now. or activate my Yawgmoth, sacrifice my Yawgmoth, and we're gonna draw a card. Because they could respond to the Undying trigger and kill the Yawgmoth. So my whole goal here is to get Geist into play this turn. So this is, I think, a mistake on their part. I've activated this wall. We're gonna draw 2 more cards because they did that, which is really good for us. I'm okay with using my life total as a resource here. I mean, unless they have like 4 lightning bolts. Okay, drew a 2, and now we can go a little crazy. So we're gonna shock. Okay. Once again, I'm not actually going to feed into their game plan. I'm going to let them deal their damage to themselves and then go from there. So we'll see what they do here. The onus is on them to make the move. Our board state's pretty strong right now. All right, so they're putting themselves to 11. Thoughtseize, fine with that. They now have 4 card types. There's the Unholy Heat. So we need to be mindful of Lightning Bolt now. Good work. I'll probably go down to 4 life, I think. Okay, pulled another Yawgmoth. So that's solid. Shadow's fine. If we pull something like a Court of Calling, we'll just win here. It is not a Court of Calling. I do think we need to start pressuring them though. They have a Croxa in their graveyard, which we also need to be mindful of. Alright, so that's going to help us prevent damage here. Okay, so our game plan here is going to be, hopefully they tap out. We'll sacrifice all of our Undying creatures to ping their creatures, and then hopefully be able to proliferate and kill them from there. That's the line of attack we're taking here. This is a close game. These are usually close games, usually a game of inches. Thinking about something. Not sure what. Okay, let's see what they got. Croaks is coming into play. I'm okay with that. Cut out for a second. They just brought their Croaks into play. I think they tapped incorrectly when they did so. They tapped out all their red sources, so to me that tells me they don't have a lightning bolt, which kind of gives me the green light to go crazy, which is really good for me. So, I mean, this is where the rubber hits the road. We're going to have to win on our turn, most likely. Which is fine. And the question is, how many cards do we draw? Okay, I think... Okay, that's pretty good, I think. I haven't done the math, but I think we should have lethal. So we're going to be taking advantage of the secret mode on Yawgmoth, which is the proliferate mode. I need to make sure I don't pass priority. We will discard our marsh. We will proliferate. See how they block, and hopefully we're dead. We got there. See, these matches are always really close. Game of inches, comes down to the wire. You really, really have to play very, very tightly to get the W. And I think we did in that match. And I think that was actually a really good match to watch, to see how, how to kind of navigate the lines and how to play this game of inches to get there in the end. I was going to say something else, but I forgot. I'm too excited right now. Oh, we have a 14 match win streak going. Tune into the next video to see if I get there to make it 15 in a row. I said it on the last match. I'll say it again. This deck is ridiculous. I think it is quietly one of the best decks in the format, if not the best. I'm biased, but hey, calling it how I see it. It's just so good. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I hope you've enjoyed this breakdown. I think this was a good one. I think there was a lot of value in watching this one. So if you did find value, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Give me a thumbs up. Leave me a comment below. Let me know what you think. This is Brandon Osborne, Control for Days. I'll see you next time.